everyone, this is Showtime 112. If you know anything about the 1982 conflict between Argentina and the UK, you must have heard about two successful Argentine aircraft attacks in which French-built Exocet missiles sank the British destroyer Sheffield and the supply ship Atlantic Conveyor. But there was one more Exocet attack by Argentine aircraft before the end of the war. It might not be as famous as the first two, but it certainly makes up for it in controversy. In late 1970s, Argentine Navy was looking for a new attack aircraft which could operate from its single aircraft carrier, and the type they selected was French Super Étendard. The contract for delivery of 14 of these aircraft was signed in September of 1979. Although it was based on an older model dating back to late 1950s with which it shared external appearance, the Super Étendard was a brand new type. It was only introduced to service in the French Navy in June 1978. Along with the aircraft, Argentina also ordered 10 AIM-39 Exocet anti-ship missiles. This weapon, with a range up to 70 kilometers, was very effective against small to medium-sized ships, and it was first used in the Iran-Iraq War. When the conflict with the UK began, only 5 Super Étendards and 5 Exocet missiles had been delivered. One of the aircraft was used as a source of spare parts. 4 of the missiles were launched in attacks on Sheffield and Atlantic Conveyor, and by late May 1982, Argentina only had 1 missile left. 2 of the Super Étendards remained in Rio Grande Air Base to perform the final attack, the primary targets being British aircraft carriers. But at the same time, the Argentine Air Force had their own plans to attack British carriers with their A4 Skyhawks. Both services depended on each other for such a mission. Navy Étendards needed Air Force's KC-130 tankers, and Air Force's Skyhawks needed guidance as they lacked navigation systems for such long operations over water. Étendards had a relatively precise inertial navigation system, and they could guide the Skyhawks to the vicinity of the British fleet, launch their remaining Exocet missile and turn back, while Skyhawks could continue behind it and attack with their bombs, as a single Exocet was not powerful enough to necessarily take a carrier out of action. The decision was eventually made to launch such a mission, and it was executed on May 30th, 1982. 4 A4C Skyhawks arrived to Rio Grande from San Julián to join 2 Super Étendards, which were flown by Capitán de Corbeta Alejandro Francisco and Teniente de Navío Luis Collavino. The lead aircraft would carry 1 Exocet missile balanced with a fuel tank under the other wing, while the second aircraft would provide electronic support. The latter would also be loaded with a full complement of cannon ammunition, and in an emergency, it could defend the leader from a Sea Harrier attack. 4 A4C Skyhawks from the 4th Fighter Group were flown by Primer Teniente José Vázquez, Primer Teniente Omar Castillo, Primer Teniente Ernesto Ureta, and Alferez Gerardo Isaac. They carried 3 parachute-retarded bombs each and ammunition for their cannons. Finally, 2 KC-130 tankers taking off from Rio Gallegos were to accompany the 6 aircraft and provide air refueling. General location of the British carrier group was estimated to be about 85 nautical miles from Port Stanley. One of the sources for this was the Argentine radar located there, but it seems like so-called external sources had a very important role in providing intelligence to Argentinians. This was a euphemism for Soviet satellite data, which the Soviets were apparently happy to provide through their military attaché in Buenos Aires. The strike group started taking off from Rio Grande at 12:30. In order to achieve a surprise, they were to approach their target from the south, which required a rather long flight. The aircraft first flew southeast at 21,000 feet. They refueled for the first time at 1:30 p.m., roughly south of Port Stanley. Then they continued northeast and refueled one more time at about 2 p.m. After that, the KC-130s turned back and 6 strike aircraft continued north, dropping down to 100 feet. At 55 miles from the estimated position of the carrier group, 2 Super Étendards climbed to 2,500 feet and turned on their radars. They detected one large contact and a medium one to its right. The large contact was almost certainly an aircraft carrier. The 2 Super Étendards then dropped down to 300 feet. But the British fleet was immediately alerted. A Lynx helicopter from HMS Andromeda picked the radar signal with its orange crop ESM equipment, and there was no doubt it was a Super Étendard's radar. HMS Exeter also detected the Argentine radars to the south of the formation, and this was soon confirmed by more ships. Another Exocet attack was imminent, and chaff launch was ordered. 1 minute later, Exeter and Invincible detected 3 contacts 29 nautical miles to the south. Alejandro Francisco, the Étendard flight leader, remembers that they climbed for the second time at about 40 miles to the target. His wingman, Colavino, communicated that his radar picture was the same as his leader's. Both planes then descended again. Francisco broke the radio silence and informed Colavino that he was locking the biggest contact and launching the missile. He also informed the Skyhawks that the target was 20 miles ahead of them. He then launched his Exocet. The 2 Étendards turned away and escaped at maximum speed. The only thing they now had to be afraid of were Sea Harriers. The 4 Skyhawks accelerated and followed the missile, which quickly disappeared on the horizon. But from that moment on, the interpretation of the events differ very significantly between the 2 sides. According to Argentina, the Skyhawks attacked HMS Invincible. The Skyhawks were flying roughly in a line abreast formation. Castillo was on the extreme left, then Vasquez, Ureta, and finally Isaac. Alferez Isaac remembers spotting a silhouette of a large ship appearing in front of them. The asymmetrical appearance indicated this was an aircraft carrier, as most other ships are symmetrical along their length. Isaac remembers being target fixated for a while and then suddenly seeing smoke coming out of the sides of the ship. He then heard a loud explosion to his left. One of the Skyhawks was hit by a surface-to-air missile. A few moments later, Isaac heard another explosion. Once again, he saw a Skyhawk crashing into the water. Vasquez and Castillo were both shot down and killed by Sea Dart missiles launched by HMS Exeter. But Ureta and Isaac continued towards the carrier. Both pilots claim having hit the Invincible. Ureta reported releasing his bombs and then flying over the Invincible and seeing the impact. Alferez Isaac describes releasing his bombs from extremely low level at a carrier completely covered in smoke, and escaping to the right as he couldn't fly over it. The smoke that both pilots saw before attacking the carrier is attributed to the Exocet missile which must have hit it. Although it was cloudy, the visibility was relatively good and the sea was calm. According to Argentina, the HMS Invincible was pulled out of combat operations, and the reduction in Harrier combat air patrols and the late home arrival of the carrier are evidence to support it. The British version is very different. The ship that the two Skyhawk pilots saw was not Invincible, but rather HMS Avenger, a frigate located south of the main force. The Exocet missile didn't hit any of the ships. It was probably decoyed by chaff and it exploded harmlessly over the water. HMS Avenger claimed having it shot down with its gun at the range of 8 miles, but many sources dismiss it, and chaff seems a more logical explanation. The smoke seen by the two Skyhawk pilots is explained by funnel smoke, resulting from the ship's hard maneuvering, added by chaff and gun smoke and possibly SAM launches. The Skyhawk pilots saw the frigate's helicopter landing pad, and it seemed like the carrier's deck. British sources say that the weather at the time was quite bad, which might explain the confusion. Finally, all the bombs with which the surviving A-4s attacked HMS Avenger narrowly missed, and no ship was damaged. I'm sure that many people will say that there is no doubt about which version is true, but it reminds me very much of that famous story of an Indian MiG-21 shooting down a Pakistani F-16. Both sides present some convincing arguments, and it's hard to completely dismiss any version. Why would the British not admit that one of their carriers was damaged? They admitted plenty of other losses, and they successfully regained the control over the islands. Is it believable that Argentine pilots could confuse a frigate with an aircraft carrier, albeit a rather small one? Could they be lying to make themselves look like heroes? It's possible that we will never have the definite answer. Let us know what you think in the comments, but please keep it polite. Press the like button if you liked the video. Join our Patreon supporters or donate on PayPal to make sure new content keeps coming out. Thank you and keep watching Showtime 112.